Psychological flexibility. Now, that is a really interesting concept for navigating this roller coaster that we call life. Join me for this week's episode where I talk with Dr. Carrie, who's also known as a sensible psychologist, and we have a great conversation about why having psychological flexibility is so important for our mental health and for aging well. Welcome back to This is Getting Old, Moving Towards an Age-Friendly World. I'm Dr. Melissa Batchelor, and I am a nurse practitioner, and I wear a lot of different hats in my work, including hosting this weekly podcast to bring you news and information on aging, caring for someone living with Alzheimer's disease, and a wide range of topics that I hope will help move us towards becoming an age-friendly world. Because when things are age-friendly, they're friendly for everyone. So if you like the podcast, the best way to help me grow and support the podcast is to like it, share it, and leave a review in whatever platform you've tuned in on today. Because no matter how old you are today, we are all aging, and these issues are going to become increasingly important. If you're a millennial, there are things that need to be in place when you reach the age of 65. So we have about 20 to 25 years to get these things in place to help you age with the support and choices that will help you, just like the people that are 65 today. Your likes, shares, and reviews help get the information out to help more people dealing with these issues. But right now, let's get going on this week's episode. So now let's dive into this week's episode where we're going to be talking about brain health and the power of psychological flexibility with Dr. Carrie. And she's finally known as a sensible psychologist. And Dr. Carrie is a speaker, author, and she's an all-around expert in the art of mastering life's roller coasters. So welcome, Dr. Carrie.
Hi, it's great to be here.
So before we get started, maybe just tell us a little bit about you and some of the work that you've been doing.
Absolutely. So I've been a psychologist in private practice for the last 22 years. Specialize in working with anxiety and trauma. And several years ago, I got really curious about who gets better and why, and wanted to bring that information, which is so practical and so easy to use, to broader audiences, which is why I wrote my book and started doing speaking and doing wonderful things like guest speaking on podcasts.
And, mental health issues are pervasive across the lifespan. So I love that this is an age-friendly topic, and really healthy aging. You have to have kind of the skills as a younger person in order to age well. And then some of the skills, actually, I was just watching this Netflix show, NIDA, I think the lady that swam from Cuba to the Key West.
Oh my God.
She tried to do it in her 30s. And she actually says in the movie, she couldn't do it because she didn't have the mental ability to do it. She wasn't psychologically ready for it. So at 60, she decides to try again. It took her 5 tries, but she did it. And I'm thinking, I can't even imagine swimming for 60 hours, but psychological fortitude. But that was her whole thing. When she was younger, as we age, sometimes we tend to develop these skills, but, so I'm excited that we're talking about this, obviously. So let's kind of get right to it. When you say the power of psychological flexibility, kind of what does that mean to you?
So psychological flexibility is the ability to be nimble and roll with what life is giving you. So a lot of times we get stuck on, I'm going to feel better when I find the perfect husband, my kids move out of the house, I finally have kids, you name it, I lose the 10 pounds. Everybody's always waiting for the utopia to determine that that's when they're going to feel good. And the trick is that actually isn't what makes us feel good. So what makes us feel good is being able to have the skills and the resiliency to field life's difficulties and life's successes. This is why I talk about the roller coaster of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to me, that also speaks to the fact that, we're only given the gift of the present. You can't be worried about the past, and you can't be anxious about the future, because neither one of those things actually exist.
Exactly.
You have to live in the present moment.
And you want to be able to learn from the past, and you also want to be able to move towards the future that you're interested in moving towards. So that's that present moment focus, is being grounded in the present while understanding what direction are you looking to go and how can you learn from the direction that you've been. So instead of just looking back to the past with regret and worry and looking towards the future with worry and sort of edginess, being present, being grounded in the present really helps you with those two bookends of like, how do I learn from the past? How do I move towards the future? And that is something that can happen across the age span.
Right. And kind of being grateful for where you are in the present moment. So, our minds can only think about one thing at the time anyway. And, so thinking about what could you be thankful for in your present moment is great. So, now let's talk about maybe the role of kind of curiosity and creativity.
So this is the fun part about psychological flexibility. So the opposite of psychological flexibility is psychological rigidity. So rigidity is where you're insisting that your life be doing exactly what you want it to. You are insisting that your expectations are coming true. And you're very, you tend to get rigid and tense when things don't unfold that way. Psychological flexibility is all about curiosity. What's happening? What's going well? What's going poorly? And it's doing an assessment of the actual reality you have in the moment instead of rigidly sticking to your expectations. So that curiosity gives you so much more power, because then you can get interested or excited in what's going on, or you can actually still be upset and frustrated about what's going on, but the curiosity can help you see your way out of it instead of just remaining stuck in it. And that then is linked with creative approaches. How do you want to get out of a reality that you don't enjoy? What is going well and how can you build on it? So curiosity and creativity are really like the benchmarks of psychological flexibility.
Yeah. And as you were talking, one of the things that I was thinking about, with, being rigid or, kind of the shoulds, I should be doing something, this should be happening at this time. As an academic, I could get really, really worked up if like my recruitment is not going well, and that's actually been my biggest struggle. And I was like, well, what can I do about it today? And I would do some stuff and then nothing would happen. I'm like, okay, well, what could I try to do about it today? Nothing would happen. Or people say no. And, then I'm like, well, I could sit here and worry all day about that, or I could move on to the other parts of my work that I can control and that are kind of in my flow. Like, we know that the recruitment has to happen. So you put a little bit of effort towards that. But if I really can't control it, I don't need to focus on it. I need to focus on these other things and be productive in this area while I think of my life as like having little plates on sticks. And I'm always like, okay, keep that up on, like I'm at the circus, but it's like, okay, recruitment, we got to keep that going. In the meantime, I need to grade these papers. I've got to write this thing. I need to do this podcast, like whatever it is. But I think that a lot of people can get stuck in like being focused on the one thing that's not working.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's really kind of what you're saying. If you're psychologically rigid, like you have to have flexibility. And then at the same time, I got a little creative too, with how I actually got a site letter yesterday. Praise the Lord. That's only taken me like forever. But I was like, well, I'm just going to go by this place because probably if I just show up, it's a cold call, but I did it. And walked in and there was like 3 old friends that I had worked with 25 years ago. It's like, well, first of all, so great to see you guys, and hopefully they'll end up getting me a letter next week. But
fantastic.
Yeah. But I think that could be true for anything. Like you could be like, well, I should be married by 30. I should have a child by, whatever age, so what are some different things that you kind of talk to people about if they're wanting to develop their psychological flexibility and curiosity? What are some practical things that people can do?
Well, one of the things that I talk a lot about is that we want to be in assessment instead of in judgment. So assessment is what's going well, what's going poorly, what's neutral, because almost all of the time we are getting positive, negative, and neutral input. But what happens is we get so siloed and we spotlight, right? It's almost like if you're in a theater and you're watching this portion of someone on stage and it's all you can see. And we will often, because our brains are primed to do this, we will often focus on what's negative. And we will forget to bring up the house lights and look around what's actually neutral. And that's actually pretty cool. What's actually negative? What's actually positive? And to do an assessment then of what you would like to do with that information. So instead of just dumping yourself into judgment, this is bad, I'm bad, they're bad, you can take a look at, this isn't going well. Oh, this seems to be a communication issue. Then you can figure out what your skillful next best move is. So I'm always talking to folks and to myself, what's my next best move in this situation, right? Like, here's what's going on. Here's what's actually going on. Not what I wish is going on, not the like only tiny narrow version of what's going on. Here's what's actually going on. And what are my options? And sometimes the answer to that is, I don't know, or I'm not sure yet. And that's okay, because that can give you the permission to slow down and pause until you have more information about what your next best move is. But for sure, getting rigid is not, that rigidity and contraction is never going to help you figure out what your options even are. So especially when you find yourself stuck in like, I can only do this or I can only do that, that's a great time to slow down and try and figure out, what are some other options in the middle? What's an option I haven't thought of?
More than 11 million Americans are providing care to either a family or friend who's living with Alzheimer's disease. And nearly 60% of these caregivers are experiencing high physical or emotional stress. But you don't have to do this alone. Visit my website at MelissaBPhD.com and learn more about a new support group that I'm starting called Caring and Sharing with Melissa B. PhD. This group will meet once a week with me. You will have access to a members-only library full of resources and practical tips to help you on your caregiving journey. And you'll have peer-to-peer support in a private Facebook group that I will oversee to make sure that the information you're getting is trustworthy. So hope to see you at an information session, and I'm looking forward to working with you very soon. When people get kind of stuck in that negative mindset, I've always referred to it as kind of like stinking thinking.
Yes.
And stinking thinking isn't a state of being able to problem solve, and I can actually remember I really, really, really wanted like this scholarship, but all the different requirements were like things that I could not do. Like I had to have a network and I had to have a mentor match, like all these things. And like from where I was sitting, I was like, this is impossible. Like it's actually not going to be possible. But why do I have this feeling and this thought inside that this is supposed to happen for me? And right. I was just like, well, I don't know. Can't wait to see what God does, or what the universe does. And if it happens, it happens. But if not, there's actually nothing I could do about it. And within 30 days of just kind of releasing it and saying, I don't know what to do, but as soon as I have an inkling, I will do it,
Yep.
Like you have to move on it. So what do you do? What would you advise someone to do if they're having a hard time, like kind of relaxing in the moment or making a decision, even if I think a lot of times you have a hard time making a decision if both of your options aren't good. So
yes.
And you don't have peace about it. So what do you recommend people do in that situation?
Well, this might sound paradoxical, but one of the first things I encourage people to do is to acknowledge how they're actually feeling. Because one of the things that we are doing so frequently, especially with anxiety, it was interesting this morning, I was just taking a peek at some stats, and World Health Organization was talking about the top 2 mental health concerns that older adults are facing, and it's anxiety and depression. And the interesting thing when you're working with anxiety and depression, and especially if you're experiencing either anxiety or depression, and they're kind of like, they like to go together too, so they can gang up on you together. But we're often in a place where we want it to go away. We need it to go away, and we're insisting that it go away. And the interesting thing, and now if you have clinically diagnosable anxiety and depression, you're going to need more than just this. So just putting that out there. But in general, especially with anxiety or when you're feeling down, if you're resisting the feeling, you're actually amplifying the feeling. So one of the first steps isn't to insist that you relax. It's actually just the opposite. It's to notice, this is part of that assessment process. It's to notice that you actually feel lousy. I feel lousy. Or, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous about this. Or I'm really anxious about that. And to acknowledge that, the power of acknowledgement with our emotions is really major because it shrinks them typically by about half. Just labeling the emotion you're having. It's like the emotions like a little kid who wants attention. And the more you ignore them, the more dramatic their behavior gets. Our emotions are like little kids having tantrums inside our bodies. So when you acknowledge them and kind of pat them on the head and let them know that you see them and you understand that they're there, they relax, which then enables you to relax and gives you enough space to get creative, to get curious, to figure out what your options are.
Yeah. Or what is that? What are those emotions trying to tell you or communicate to you? Because if, it could be some misalignment.
Yep.
It could be, as you first started talking, it made me think about, some people age well and they have positive beliefs about aging.
Yep.
And I guarantee you those people don't have as much anxiety or depression. It's not to say that they don't have it at all, but they are managing it more difficultly because they're approaching the aging process from a positive perspective compared to someone who has like negative aging beliefs. And, you're right. You feel that anxiety and the depression. You're like, oh, well, I feel bad. And it must be because I'm getting older. It's like, versus the person who's like, I feel bad. Like, what's going on? It's like, oh, well, you ate like a Big Mac last night. Or like, it could be from a lot of things, or so I do think that there's a lot to be said too about your overall life outlook.
And you're actually hitting on one of the second pieces of research that I was having fun doing a dive into in preparation for this podcast, which is that the attitude and mindset that you take towards aging is causally related, not just correlationally related, right? These aren't just two things per chance sitting next to each other. This thing causes this thing. Mm-hmm. So a more positive experience of aging is absolutely predicted by a more positive thinking pattern about aging.
Yeah. I mean, thoughts are
exactly
powerful.
What you're saying. Yep.
Yeah. And I've been talking this with my youngest son too. It's like, well, if you expect to go to school and have a bad day, you're 90% guaranteed you're going to have a bad day versus if you're like, you know what, I'm going to have a good day. And then if something bad happens, say, well, fluke, that's not going to take my joy. It's not going to steal my happiness. Like, but for the most part, you'll have a better day just because you expected to have a better day.
Well, and it's also then noticing what you're paying attention to. So acknowledging that reality, that positive, negative, and neutral input is on the board almost all the time, just in different, variations, different doses maybe. So that on a bad day, you've maybe had too many doses of negative stuff, but on a good day, you've had lots of doses of positive stuff. But on either day, if you can challenge yourself to notice the reality of positive, negative, and neutral, then you have inherently psychological flexibility.
Right. Well, and you think about how your body feels when you are in the middle of some stinking thinking, because it does happen to all of us. But I can tell you, like, if I'm focused on like, well, they did this and they said that, and it's been great to read some of the books I've read recently. Like the authors are kind of doing this internal dialogue now. And it's like, we can all kind of relate, right? But we have so many thoughts in a day that we don't actually pay attention to.
Right.
But if you get into where you're like, well, and I would say this, and I would say that, like, you're having this whole like conversation in your head and none of it ever happens. But in your body, like you feel that stress and anxiety. And I'll catch myself and I'm like, girl, who are you talking to? Like, you're talking to yourself, and you're just, this is not going to solve anything. So why don't you just let that go, and let's, focus on something that's good, and this is even biblical too, like whatever is good, whatever is positive, to focus on those things, because it does lighten your mood. But I'm glad to know I now have an image of like this little child where I'm like, you know what? Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for bringing that to my attention.
I see
you. You're free to go play now.
Yep. Yep. Well, and to be able to label what's happening. Like my husband and I went on vacation a couple of weekends ago. We have a cabin in Montana, which is like owning a log cabin in the middle of the woods has been a lifelong dream for me. And now we have one, and it's really cool. Yeah. But I have all of these expectations set up with said cabin, right? Like, it's going to be relaxing. It's going to be fun. It's going to be easy. So I walked in and I'd had a stressful week, and I was really counting on this trip to be relaxing and fun and easy. And instead we arrived and the power was out, and we had no power and no water, and it was 29 degrees inside the cabin. Right? So my expectations have like really hit the rocks. And then, so we like handle that first little problem and get the fire going and turn the generator on. And, we're like charging everything back up, and it's going to be a little while before we can have water because it's too cold. But, but it's like, okay, that problem solved, and I can feel the relief. And then we go down the street to have some dinner because it was a balmy 33 in the house when we left for dinner. And we come back, and something in lighting the fire has unleashed a hornet's nest inside our house.
And it's nice and warm in there, so they're not going to want to go outside, right? They're like, Florida.
So, and they're a little sleepy, which was fortunate because it wasn't like a swarm, but we probably killed individually 50 hornets, one by one, because they would fly and then they'd fall to the ground. You had to avoid a whole front section of the house because a hornet would fall on you. But it was fascinating because I was watching my expectations not be met, and I was watching myself kind of having a tantrum, right? Like, I want this to be easy, and this is supposed to be fun. And it was like, take a deep breath. You're actually safe. Yes, it's chilly, but you're safe. We have a solution. It's going to take a little while. So like, breathe, notice, work with the reality that you do have, and label the process of what's happening. Like, oh, look at you trying to have a tantrum right now. Well, you can have a tantrum. It's not going to warm the house up any faster.
And It's not good for your health either. And as you were telling that story, I was thinking about the other day going to meet my friend to Hot Works, and I'm driving over there, and I left I left 5 minutes late because I couldn't find my key. And I'm always like on time, right? Okay, so this is like I'm already
violating your values.
I'm going to be late. 5 minutes late because I couldn't find my key. Get in the car. I'm driving over there. There's a little bit of traffic, a little more traffic than usual. And then there was a detour that I had forgotten about. And so I've lived here for 20 years, but I've been gone for 12. And I was like, I think I remember like this goes around here. And I get to and then I thought I could turn left, but there was like a median there now. So I'm like, now I'm gonna have to go out through this light all the way around. And at that point, it's the time I'm supposed to be there. And I really needed to be there 5 minutes prior to that, like the class is starting. And I'm sitting at the light and I'm like, well, I could be in this car, like having a little road rage thing, or I can just continue to listen. I said, but I'm actually proud of myself. I'm sitting here, like I've not let this disrupt me. I'm going to get there. I text her, let her know I was going to be 5 minutes late.
Yeah.
I walked in. I was like, it was shit show getting here, but I'm here and I'm still happy and I'm still calm and my blood pressure's not up through the roof and I haven't made anybody else mad. So there's a lot to that, to having the psychological flexibility, being curious about as an observer. I think that's really great. Being creative with your solutions, learning, I like this idea of like, is this positive, negative, neutral, and maybe giving your attention more to the positive and neutral aspects if you can't do anything about the negative.
Yep.
So I've learned a lot. So thank you so much for being with me today.
You're welcome.
So now let's tell people where they can find you. So your book is called Self-Help on the Go, because you are not broken, but life gets tricky sometimes. So we'll include the link to the book in the show notes and on my website on the blog for this episode, as well as how to get in touch with you through your social media, but they can also find you on your website.
Yeah. And the website name is the same as the title of my book, selfhelponthego.com.
Easy enough.
Yeah.
And then also you speak for organizations?
I do. So that notion of sensible psychological tools for leaders and teams, it's using these same principles of what are the things that I have learned that work to help people navigate life's ups and downs, and to stop describing themselves and their teams as broken, and instead doing that assessment of what's working and not working. I come in and help people do that, and then give them some solutions about how to move forward.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. I have enjoyed learning about the power of psychological flexibility, and appreciate you being here with me today.
It's great to be here. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. You can check out other episodes on this platform or visit my website at MelissaBPhD.com. Thanks to listeners like you. In the first 18 months of This Is Getting Old, we have reached a ranking of top 10% globally, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your support in making that happen. I'm also really excited to let you know that you can now work with me directly, either one-on-one, or you can join one of the groups that I coach. Particularly if you're an adult child dealing with an aging parent, or a caregiver trying to manage the complexities of someone living with Alzheimer's disease. In the show notes, you can also find information about how to reach out and contact me directly, and I hope to work with each of you very soon as we discover and share more ways to make the world more age-friendly for everyone. My website also has information about how to contact me for speaking engagements, or if you have someone you'd like to recommend as a show guest for This Is Getting Old. If you have a product or service in the aging space that you would like to advertise and or sponsor an episode, there's more information about that on my website. And you can also find books and courses that I developed and learn more about the products and services that I recommend. So don't forget, if you like the podcast, the best way to help me grow and support it is to like it, share it, and leave a review in whatever platform that you've tuned in on today. Your likes, shares, and reviews help increase my rating and my rankings, and also help other people find the podcast. I look forward to reading your reviews and hearing from you.